A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with Ziona. It was a few weeks before the trip. She was feeling weak physically. Mentally, of course, she was as strong as ever. And we talked about where she was in the process and how she was handling things. And she said to me, for a while, I wondered why me. And then I came to think about the fact that I have lived a long life. I've gotten to do everything that I could possibly want to do. I just want to be able to go on this one last family trip to Cancun, and then I'll come home, and as she said to many people, poof, I'll die. Well, it's exactly what she did. And I think that that will be a theme that we will hear frequently this morning, is Ziona lived her life the way she wanted to throughout her life and in so many different aspects of it. Usually when we have a funeral for somebody who is 95, there are family members and a few family friends who will come, and not a lot of age diversity, shall we say, at that point beyond the immediate family. And looking out here is true testament to the incredible life and impact that Ziona has, as we see many of her students who are here, ranging in all ages. And we're so honored that you have come and that you are here to be able to pay your respect as well. We often don't know exactly what words to offer at times like this. And so our tradition teaches us that we should turn to the book of Psalms. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi agabro lacha, mi yishkohon bahar kodshecha, holech tomim u'foat tzedek, v'daver emet bilvavahu, lo rogal al lishono, lo asal rehu ra'aha, v'chirpa lo nasa al krovoho, nivze be'enav nim'as v'et yirei Adonai yichabed, nishba l'haraha v'lo yamir. Kaspo lo natan beneshech v'shochad an naki lo lekach ose ela lo yimot leolam. A slight adaptation of Psalm 15. God, who deserves to enter into your holy sanctuary? Who can merit a place in the presence of God? One who lives their life with integrity and does what is right, who speaks the truth without deceit and has no slander upon her tongue, who does no evil to others nor mistreats a neighbor, who spurns a contemptible person but honors those who revere God, who never retracts a promise once made, even if it were to bring her harm, who lends no money at unfair rates and accepts no bribe against the innocent. One who makes these deeds their own, she shall indeed stand firm forever. And from Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, bihino teshe yahar bitzeni, amei menuchot yinahaleini, nafshi yeshovev, Nafshi yeshovev, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. A Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside the still waters. God restores my soul and guides me in straight path for God's name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We are honored to have many of those who knew her best to be able to come and share some of the stories of her life. We're going to hear from 4 of her children, from Dan, Dave, Jim, and Ed, and from her grandchildren as well. Dan.
In the past hour, I've seen people that I just met in the last 2 months, staying with my mom as she's feeling sicker, and I got to meet people from the dance community, the piano community, and it was just great to meet so many people she had touched. Also in the last hour, I've seen people that I literally haven't seen in 60 years, and that's really cool too. So it was really a statement of how many people's lives she touched. So I just have a few short words. So I live in California, and I usually saw my mom a couple times a year at weddings and bar mitzvahs and large family gatherings, but there's really no time to talk. There's no, hello, how are you doing? How are the kids? But no deep conversation. So I got the idea to take her away for a weekend, and we went away to Nashville together a year and a half ago. And it was so great just hanging out. We went and did tourist things like the Grand Ole Opry and some other tourist museums. We walked all over Nashville looking for the best Louisiana hot chicken. My mom, we walked a lot, and we did not walk slowly. We finally found Hattie B's hot chicken, and it was delicious. And she said, Popeyes is better. The other, I'll be brief. The only other comment I wanted to make is everywhere my mom went, she built community. Whether it was swim team, where she was always organizing the travel, and all the swimmers knew her, and all the coaches knew her. Or obviously piano, all the students were very fond of her. She taught across multiple generations and multiple interconnected families, and she had recitals, and everybody got together, and it was a really strong community. And of course, dance. where she had some of her best times. And that community is also very, very much fans of Ziona. And it's just a tribute to her, the community she built.
David?
Definitely, I'm not as high-tech as my brother. Thank you for those people who traveled to come here. Thanks so much. It means a ton. I'm David. I'm the middle of the 5 kids. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about community. With our siblings, especially over the last 15 months since that emergency surgery that Mom had in December 2024, we've worked really closely together, which was a challenge because Dan, as he mentions, in California. I'm in North Carolina. Jim lives in Chicago and Ed in Virginia. But this brought us as close as we've ever been. That leaves one person who is local, and that is Edna and her husband, Donnie. And Edna had the privilege of helping, or she defaulted into, taking care of Mom, which required an enormous amount of thankless effort. This was boots on the ground, something you can offer to help from far away, but you can't do what Edna did, sitting with doctors, taking care of Mom, accompanying her here and there. It is truly thankless, and it's impossible to imagine how this would have been done without Edna and Donnie helping out locally. As a result, Mom was able to stay in her house and live in it, and frankly pass away in her bed, a place that she grew to love, just this past Friday. So I want to say publicly thank you, Edna and Donnie. In thinking about what to say at your mother's funeral, there's of course sadness. This is sadness that she's gone. We can't reminisce. We can't share family updates. We can't be overfed when we visit her. And we can't hear her anymore complain about the Washington Commanders. And, you know, being her kid, full-time job. She had endless energy, which you'll hear a lot about. Always had something to talk about, whether you wanted to talk about it or not. And so when all this communication flow stops, there is this vacuum of silence. And that's going to be the hardest thing to adjust to. And I'm sure her friends, colleagues, students who are here are going to feel the same thing as well. But rather than dwell on sadness, because there's plenty of sadness, I also think this is a woman who lived to be 95, living a very fulfilling, highly active, energetic life, who did things on her own terms. And I want to take the posture of celebrating a long life well lived. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Impossible to detail everything she did. So I'm going to try to group it into 3 things. The first one is intellectual curiosity and energy, and Dan touched on some of this before. Over the course of her life, she developed numerous spheres, separate spheres of activity, and everyone in that sphere knew her really well. Of course, the piano teacher, and you maybe saw the numbers, 75,000 some odd lessons over 70 years, generations of students. Her first ones are probably older than me, that she taught, and she taught children of them and grandchildren of them. She was the Silver Spring chairperson of the American College of Musicians, and she arranged countless recitals and submitted high school certifications for many of her students to help them continue music. But she was also a very busy travel agent, and this started probably by doing a favor, not knowing what she was getting into, to help do travel arrangements for the nation's capital swim club, which had Olympians on it, and so that entailed a lot of domestic and international travel. She then thought, well, you know, people were saying, can you help me with this or that? So she became a travel agent, and she had an office that she went to, joining an agency to do that. That was like another career. That kind of led her to say, well, I shouldn't just be talking about these places I'm going to go. So she ended up going all over the world to 6 continents, and it was amazing at times the people she would run into. And some of the people that she traveled with became lifelong friends because they shared that. Dancing, obviously, was a big part of her life the last 20, 25 years. Not just lessons, but a lot of competitions. Again, domestically, regionally, internationally, and she loved it. The people who she danced with are, I think some of them are here today, and she called them her second family. She was also a performance pianist, and by this I don't mean she got up in front of an audience in a grand piano and performed works. She did things that, in her mind, people wanted to hear. So this started out at the Watergate Hotel lobby. Now this was post-Nixon, of course, and there was a tip jar, but that was Mom playing whatever she was playing. But I think more meaningfully, she would go to senior citizen communities, memory care units, assisted living places, and just did what she thought people would appreciate. She would do spoken word and accompany herself on piano, and she sometimes said, "I'm older than most of the people I'm performing for," and that was true. The performance is not just a way for people to kill an hour or an hour and a half. One poignant occasion, an older woman was sitting in the audience, and she was very taciturn and had never been seen to speak. And no one knew why, and Mom played, various things, and she was playing Tea for Two, of all things. And this woman stood up and started singing. And Mom was taken aback, and after the performance, she sat with the woman. She found out she was a Holocaust survivor. She was very introverted. Mom held her hand, and they talked for a while after that. In other occasions, and I've seen this, she would play old Yiddish tunes, and people would be singing along to tunes they hadn't sung since they were a kid, 50, 60, or 70 years ago. And that was very touching, and that was why she did it. She did this right up until early this year when her declining health prevented her from going further. Most importantly, her role was as a mother. 5 kids in 10 years. If it was within the walls of our house, it was up to her to deal with it. In fact, after kid number 5, Jim, she said, this house is not big enough for our family. We need a bigger house, and maybe not getting the answer she wanted. The next time my dad went out of town on business, he came back and she had bought a house. And that is the house that she lived in for the next 60 years, and right up until this past Friday. I remember early morning swim practices, 5 a.m. I remember her bringing scrambled egg sandwiches to outdoor long course spring practices when it was freezing. Those interminably long age group swim meets. She was there for all that stuff. She was a behind the scenes advocate with Dad, and she helped us kind of get things that were in our best interest, even though he maybe didn't see the light before she did her thing. So the interesting thing here is that there are all these unique spheres, but they weren't overlapping. The only thing people knew about the one, they knew about travel or dancing or piano. They didn't know that there were like 2 or 3 or 4 other areas of activity going on at the same time, which to me was amazing. We never heard her complain about this is too hard. She just did this stuff. Second category, strength and determination. Her most visible probably quality, and the best ways to describe what happened since her operation. This was December, year and a half ago, 15 months ago. Emergency surgery. Ellen and I drove up here and we brought funeral clothes because we were not sure her 90-pound body was going to make it. But as soon as she was in ICU and she had breathing tubes and feeding tubes and she was completely inert. And this is a woman who had never so much as had the sniffles. She had no idea what was going on. Why are all these people here? As soon as those tubes were taken out, it was clear she was not having any of this business. She leaned over and in a coarse whisper that was more appropriate for a mafia boss, she said, "You got to get me out of here." This was the first of what came to be known as her executive orders. Soon after, when hearing the standard course of action was to go to a rehab facility, she goes, "You just may as well just leave me here. I'm not going to any rehab facility." And she didn't. She landed as a long-term resident of Edna and Donnie. But she never lost sight of her goal. She had shrunk to about 85 pounds at that point. This is January a year ago. Was in a hospital bed. She was barely able to lift a cup of water to her mouth. And she says, "I'm going to be home living by myself next month." And we all ran around like crazy. What kind of equipment should we buy? How are we going to do this? How's she ever going to make it? She can't climb stairs. And that was all a waste of time. She met her goal. By February, she was in her house. She was climbing steps by herself. And in fact, she resumed her full schedule of teaching piano lessons. She next wanted to claim her independence. So in February, She said, by next month, I'm going to be driving. God help us, she was. On one occasion, I asked her, does it really make sense for her to drive to and from Virginia at night on the Washington Beltway for dance activities? And she says, don't worry, I just keep it to 50 miles an hour, which, if you know the Beltway, is not the most safe things. And by August, she'd resumed dancing, which she continued until December. These dance things are not for the meek. They are 100 to 150 or more dances within a certain, specific 2 or 3 day period. Her final challenge was celebrating the 95th birthday, which we've talked about a little bit. She spent 2 years planning this, and she marshaled every ounce of energy to make it there. She could barely climb the steps. She had full-time caregivers. I personally kept a mom-o-meter, which was like, what is her chance of actually making this trip? Because there's a lot of planning that had to go into it. And I got down to 0, and among the siblings were like, yeah, who's going to tell her she can't go? And it's like, none of us wanted to do that. So she went. And she made it with a lot of determination and an equal amount of difficulty. And again, Edna and Donnie escorting her the whole way there and the whole way back. She made it to Wednesday of that week, which was her 95th birthday. We had a very nice party. She was in her wheelchair. She was weak, but she was there, and she had a great time. And she had frequently said, as you heard, I just want to make Cancun and come back and go poof. And that's pretty much what she did. That was her last executive order to herself. Within 2 weeks of being back, she had declined precipitously, and we lost her this past Friday really quickly after she came back. In terms of legacy, I'll just say that she taught hundreds of students, and those students had great experiences, and they had children, and they encouraged their children to take piano lessons, whether with mom or somewhere else. And that has just expanded the number of people out there with music appreciation. But I think even bigger was she used her resources in a way that strengthened the bonds of our family. Over 30 years, every 2 years, she did one of these big trips, and they grew year by year. As a result, you've got these family members dispersed all over the country, and they're still very close. In fact, the cousins are maybe even closer, and we think, they compare notes, they communicate, and at this point, probably plotting the overthrow of their parents. We can't be sure. But this last bit of keeping the family together was really her greatest gift. She didn't say it much. At the very end, when we toasted her on her birthday, she said family above everything, and she meant it. So when we think about Ziona, I hope we think of a person who lived a long, fulfilling life, improved the lives of others, valued family, and definitely did it on her own terms. And we can all only hope that we'll leave something similar behind when it's our turn to go poof.
Okay, Jim?
Thank you. David, I was going through some of her things this week, and I found check stubs from the Watergate Hotel from 40 years ago. She was paid $40 plus tips. I think they were taxed back then. I echo your sentiment about Edna and Donnie. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. I wanted to share a couple of observations, and these are very brief. But this is a woman, my mom, who adopted technology long. She learned about email when she was my age, and I don't know if anyone here has received emails from her. But if you have, you can only picture that her keyboard has a giant heart emoji and a giant exclamation point, because that's and also everything's capped locks all the time. Great! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! So I love that. I'll always remember that. My lesson learned there is just to share the good humor, share the love. You can never share enough. I'm the youngest, 4 kids within 5 years, and then a bit of a gap of 5 years, and then me. So a couple of weeks ago, actually, maybe a month ago, I was sitting in her kitchen, and I said, Mom, it's time to come clean. Was I an accident? And she said, no, you are the result of a moment of passion. Lesson learned. Lesson learned, especially for Adam, my son. Don't ask a question that you do not want the answer to. Above all, I'm reminded by her life that it's never the wrong time or too late to pursue your passion. And I'm reminded that her passing is a call to action for all of us to get moving and do it. Thank you.
And now from Ed.
A lot of stuff has been touched upon already about her life, and certainly there are different spheres of her life, as has been said, and I'm going to focus more on the music sphere, and something about the music and connectedness and connections developed through music. And she went to the music conservatory in Israel as she was growing up, and in '53 she moved to the States, and shortly after settling down, a neighbor learned of her talent with piano and said, "Hey, can you teach my child?" And that's how the teaching began, a connection with one person to share her gift. And she found something that she really loved. And again, that's the start of her 70-year career in teaching piano students. She never once advertised for piano students, but they kept coming to her. And that's a big connection. And I think the connection, I strongly believe, and I think she did and certainly learned over time, how music can really connect people in ways, as Dave alluded to, singing a song for somebody with dementia that snaps them out of where they were to connect with them is real important. She spent many years accompanying various singers. She was not a singer herself, but she would accompany people and play at a wide variety of events that they would sing to share the music. And I think, and playing at the Watergate Hotel and playing at the retirement community, you could say she was sharing her music, but I think what caught her up is sharing her connection. And so I'm going to do something a little more non-standard here, because one of the songs that I know she's played countless times with accompanying people is from Fiddler on a Roof. It's Sunrise, Sunset. And many of you probably know it, I'm hoping. And she sang, that was a song that was important to her. The song from the movie Fiddler on the Roof is about marriage, but I think if you take the chorus, it's really about time and changing and the passing of time. I've been very fortunate in the last 6-7 weeks to be able to spend more time with her because of my work situation, and I was able to drive up and spend a couple of days a week with her and have some good time. And it's, sometimes she's very quiet and I get very quiet, and a lot of those times what I know to do is I reach for my guitar and I sit and I play some songs for her. Or sometimes I didn't have my guitar and I would just sing. And so there was one time in her last couple days when I was sitting with her, and what can you do at that point to connect? Because she was not really reacting to anything. And I started singing Sunrise, Sunset. And when I got to the chorus, her lips started to move. And so what I'd like to do is kind of see if we can all together, I know we didn't come here to sing necessarily, but to sing that chorus together and kind of reach it up to gather her spirit and just share that with each other. And some of you, I'm sure, know the words, and some of you maybe not quite. The sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow the days. Seedlings turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze. And then it goes, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly the years. one season following another, laden with happiness and tears. And so I don't really want to do this by myself, but I'm hoping I get some voices to join in with me here. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow the days. Seedlings turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly the years, one season following another, laden with happiness and tears. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now I'd like to call upon the 13 grandchildren. I assure you not all 13 are going to speak, but we will ask them all to come up to support one another as those who have been designated will share a few remarks on behalf of the group.
Okay. Friends and family, thank you for being here, and welcome to yet another celebration of life in honor of Ziona Tuchler. For those who may not know, my name is Michael,
I'm Margot.
and we are the 13 grandkids, minus a few who could not make it today. While she loved many people in this room, we're all in agreement on one thing. We were clearly her favorite generation.
The proof was in the chocolate eggs. No matter the time of year or the occasion, we were the only ones gifted with those little foil-wrapped treasures every single time we walked through her door, and even when she walked through ours when visiting from all over the country. Yeah, she literally flew cross-country with kalte Hund and chocolate eggs just for us.
That special bond was most visible at her famous Thanksgiving speeches. She closed her remarks with her signature.
Be thankful for the alarm that goes off in the early morning hours because it means you are alive.
That speech always meant so much to us. As a reminder to be thankful every day, even for the parts of our lives that may seem frustrating or uncomfortable, because she taught us that those are the moments that a person can grow the most.
Her dedication to us was as much about the big life lessons as it was about the small, quiet moments. She was our teacher. She gave nearly all of us a sporting chance at the piano. Some of us actually learned to play, while others tried. But for those, like Adam, the music stuck. They played a duet every time they were in the same room with the piano, always sealing the performance with a high five at the end.
She was also our confidant. She was a best friend who offered sage advice on everything from messy breakups to navigating our careers. When Karen worked her first news job in California, Ziona spoke to her on the phone almost every day at 6 a.m. to offer enthusiastic pep talks and critiques of the day's reels.
She was our biggest fan. When Michael painted a landscape of the beach in Ixtapa, Mexico from one of our family trips, she didn't just say thank you. She hung it in her entryway, making sure every guest who entered her home saw it and knew exactly who the artist was. This is how she cherished all of our accomplishments. Her house was usually adorned with our photos and works of art.
And she was our companion. When Margot lived with her in DC, their Tuesday falafel dates were sacred. Of course, Grandma's independence still shone through. She wasn't above accidentally watching The Bachelorette when Margot wasn't there if the mood struck her.
Grandma Z made the world feel wide open for us. She was a second mother who fiercely protected us, making us feel safe no matter the circumstance. She was full of wisdom, full of music, and as we all know, she never met a bowl of salted nuts she didn't like.
These stories are just a small sampling of her impact. More than anything, Grandma Z valued family togetherness. Her greatest wish was for this family to remain close and strong in perpetuity. The legacy she leaves us is a simple command: pay it forward. We intend to continue the traditions, the support, and the fierce love she started. Grandma, we love you up to the sky. Thank you.
You talk about a legacy right there. And we all bear witness to the pledge you just made. So you need to follow through on it. As you know, pledges are very important in Judaism, and you guys have to stay true to your word to keep that going through the generations. And the generation to come, who we have a couple of representatives here and one soon to be here. Ziona was one of 5 children that her mom birthed. A son who died in childbirth. Her older sister, Shula, who's 98. Her twin sister, Ruta, who preceded her in death. And her youngest sister, Dina, who is here with us today. And of course, she had then 5 children of her own, and then their spouses who she learned to love like children. Edna and Donnie and Dan and Suzanne, Dave and Ellen and Ed and Heather and Jim and Amy. And the 13 grandchildren, Karen, Ilan, Eyal, Kayla, Lonnie, Sarah, Margot, Ryan, Eli, Michael, Andrew, and Peter, many of them with spouses and significant others. But if I listed all of them, we would be here until Yontif starts tonight. And the great-grandchildren, Maya, who was up here, and Elsie, who's playing in the back. It is really quite remarkable. When I spoke to Edna shortly before Pesach began, and she told me that her mom's breathing had slowed and was more labored, we both knew that she wasn't likely to make it through the 3-day yontif that was about to begin. I asked if the family was going to do Seder bedside, and she told me that her mom would have nothing of it. She wanted them to go on as they had planned to. But later that evening, when we were going through my own family Seder, I was thinking about Ziona and started thinking about who she might resemble most within the Passover story. There was a thought of the 4 children, but of course she came from 5. She had 5. Didn't seem exactly appropriate. And besides that, she couldn't just be a piece of the story. Ziona really was, as we've heard, so multifaceted that she really is aspects of the entire story. Now, since her mother's name was Yocheved, My first thought was, of course, to Miriam. The most obvious connection between them being the music. Torah tells us that after the Israelites crossed through the sea, "V'tikach Miriam hanaviyah achot Aharon et hatof biyada," that Miriam, the prophet, Aaron's sister, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with their instruments and dancing. We know, as we've heard, music was always a central part of Ziona's life. Growing up in Tel Aviv in pre-state Palestine, Ziona began studying piano at the Ron Shulamit Conservatory in Tel Aviv, where she attended lessons 3 days a week. Later, when she came to America, she continued to study, and two of her most important teachers, Harry McLeod and jazz pianist Ron Elliston, with whom she studied for many years, but she continued taking lessons and studying. She was never done with her own learning, even as she became such an important teacher to so many. Because like Miriam, she used her love of music for celebration, playing piano at family weddings, at B'nai Mitzvah, other occasions. As we heard, Sunrise Sunset was a favorite, but I'm told she only sang it one time at one of those weddings and was encouraged not to after that. But I actually heard a recording of it yesterday, and I don't think it's nearly as bad as people may have thought that it was, but who knows? My ear isn't the most well-attuned, as you could hear. But of course, Mrs. Tuchler, as she was known to the more than 500 students she taught, was most well known for leading others in music. The passion, as we heard, began when she didn't have a piano of her own and she practiced next door and was asked to teach their child, and word soon spread. An illustrious career over 70 years, and as we heard, just ended 2 or 3 months ago, when she gathered her students to tell them that she was too tired and couldn't teach anymore. I'm told that they were in a state of shock. Many of them were second or even third generation to study with her. And Ziona, this time following in her daughter Edna's footsteps, also loved to dance. Especially in the latter portion of her life, she took up ballroom dancing at the Arthur Murray studio in Bethesda, participated, as we heard, in dance competitions around the country. When asked how she could do 105 dances in the course of 3 days, she said, "Easy, it's 35 a day." She was, as was written about her, a fixture and beloved member of the Arthur Murray studio, and considered their staff and fellow students to be a second family. But in addition to the musical connection, Ziona was also like Miriam as a prophetess. Just as Miriam followed Moses down the river when he was floating in the basket, as we are told, she had her own way of manipulating events to make sure that it would come out in the way that she would want it to. For Miriam, it was to make sure that his own mother would be able to be the nurse for him. For Ziona, it could be any number of things. If she had a vision of how things were supposed to turn out, she would do whatever she needed to make sure that things would work out that way. And while Miriam didn't have a twin, Ziona and Miriam were both middle children. But in other ways, Ziona was a little bit like Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, taking care of people, rescuing them when needed. She was also dressed as one might imagine a princess, always elegant, beautiful, made up. She carried herself in a matter with incredible dignity. I'll never forget walking into the hotel lobby for Nikki and Ilan's wedding and seeing her, and I'd only seen her at high holidays prior to that, really. but I knew immediately who she was when I saw her, just from the way that she carried herself. And in the Torah, we meet Pharaoh's daughter swimming in the Nile. And as we've heard, swimming was a very important part of Ziona's life as well, although not as much in her own swimming as it was facilitating swimming for others, beginning with the summer leagues at Franklin Knowles Pool, and later with AAU travel leagues. As we heard, she would drive the kids early in the morning to practice, sitting in the car, often in the freezing winters, waiting for them to finish. Now, if we're being honest, we can also see a little bit of the taskmasters when we think about Ziona. She demanded what might have seemed to be impossible standards, sometimes for her children and her students. Perhaps that began as when she was an instructor in the IDF, shortly after Israel had become a state. She trained the boys to use hand grenades and shoot rifles, and later participated in officer training programs. These are not areas where there is much room for error. At home, an A- was a disappointment. In piano, a student dare not slouch or come to a lesson without practicing. She would remind them of the sign above the piano in her office: slow practice, fast progress. Fast practice, slow progress. No practice, no progress. She expected everyone to work as hard as she did, but that was a pretty lofty standard to maintain. And you might even say that she had just a little bit, not the evil part, but a little bit of Pharaoh, if we think about that stubbornness and not willing to let things go very easily. But as I thought about it more, it occurred to me that she had a lot of Moshe inside of her as well. She grew up in a very comfortable home, albeit in Tel Aviv, not a palace in Egypt. Moshe had famously had a speech disorder. Ziona's thick Israeli accent, especially when she first arrived, created a little bit of communication challenges, but both of them overcame those challenges and were quite capable of making themselves heard. Like Moshe, as we've heard about, she led large groups of people on travel adventures, albeit hers seemed to be a little bit more planned, with no one left wandering in the desert for 40 years. Like her piano career, she sort of fell into becoming a travel agent, as we've heard, first with the swim teams and then becoming a full-time travel agent. And she was also like Moshe in living a long and full life with nearly full strength right up to the end. And like Moshe, she seemed to know exactly when she was going to die. But unlike Moshe, she did get to do that final trip that she had been hoping for. Cancun, not the promised land, but still, she got to go where she wanted to be with the people whom she had traveled throughout her life with, her family. We heard how she dictated the way that the end of her life would go, starting from that time in the hospital to the rehabilitation at Edna and Donnie's, and then back home where she defied everyone's expectations in being able to resume her career in teaching, and then finally to make it to Cancun just a few weeks ago. The Midrash notes how rare it was that Moshe knew the timing of his death, but not even he could dictate the terms the way that she did. She was indeed larger than life. She can't be contained to just one character or one story. And later on this afternoon, back at Edna and Donnie's, there will be many opportunities to fill in the midrash, to tell the stories that we weren't able to fit in a service here. We hope that you will join us following the burial at 3806 Wingleaf Court. The Torah concludes by telling us that there will never be another prophet like Moshe. I think it's fair to say that there will never be another woman like Ziona, who lived such a rich and meaningful and diverse life, leaving behind an incredible legacy with her 5 children, with her sister, with her friends, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and of course, her beloved students. And throughout it all, she did it her way. And no, I won't be singing it. May her memory always be for a blessing. Now I'd like to call upon Cantor Rochelle Helsner to come join me. She'll be reciting the El Malei Rachamim prayer, the memorial prayer, following which we'll ask the pallbearers to come forward to escort Ziona to the hearse, and we'll all rest of the family, and then all the rest of us will follow behind, and then onto the cemetery, Judean Gardens, where we will gather again behind the hearse to go with her on that last leg of the journey to her burial site, and then following burial, as I mentioned, back to Edna and Donnie's house. Please rise as you're able.
שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת ציונה בת אברהם ויוכבד שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים הסיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותתרור בתרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר
Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Ziona Tuchler, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. May be seated if the pallbearers would please come forward.